What's up out there, friends and family? Thank you so much for tuning into your soul mapping astral weather report for July 19th, 2018.
It is the only consistent truth that there is is our fault.
I'm Thomas, and the Astral Weather Report is where I synthesize astrology and the 64 hologenetic archetypes to give you a better idea of some of the energies that will be at play today, from the genetic all the way on up to the cosmic levels. Well, definitely get ready for another emotionally pretty weird day. The moon is still making its way through Aquarius, where it's getting near the end of Aquarius. It's going to be transitioning over into Pisces. But before it does, it's going to make these inconjuncts with the Sun and Mercury and Venus. And this is going to feel really weird. There's just maybe like a lot of tension that we have going on. Now, in one respect, we are going to feel a bit of a shift today because, first of all, the Sun does move on to 56.1, the Earth moves on to the 60.1, and the Earth is coming off its conjunction with Pluto now, and this is going to feel like a shift into, us looking for these emotional feelings, these ways that we want to guide this new story, these ways that we can put certain boundaries up around the way that we want to feel as we're stepping into this new world and this new story that we're all jumping into writing. But with these aspects to the moon and these inconjuncts, it's like we can have so many desires or so much stuff just coming up emotionally. The moon's going to be making these aspects on the 30, and it's like all this stuff can be coming up. And with all these things coming up, the tendency could be with so much emotional tension as to where we want to go. We're like, maybe could be looking for ways to distract ourselves from actually checking in with how we really feel. Really, the helpful aspect of this transit is if we really sit with all of this water, this emotional energy that we have going on, all these different kind of desires, we're going to be able to feel into the ones that really just aren't who we are, or we don't want them anymore, we don't need them anymore. We're going to be able to process them out. But we also do really need to feel good right now. So I'm not saying that, it can't be a good idea to maybe distract ourselves a little bit with things that make us feel better, but we have to kind of ride that edge of like, where are we just kind of checking out and distracting ourselves totally, or maybe just giving in to every little desire or feeling that comes up. But it's like, it's allowing us to pay attention to which direction that we are going to go. The moon will make aspects on the 29 degree of Aquarius today, which is kind of like, we have so many unique and different directions that we want to feel into, so many ways that we want to serve, but it's like, which ones are going to actually be good for us? It's like, kind of akin this to, right now there's this very new seed of collective consciousness, of sort of like a hive mind developing in a lot of different ways. As the seed, or these new neurological pathways within our body and thus within the collective organism, come online, it's like as the seed starts to sprout in different ways, whether it's, coming above ground to make it into the light, or it's still developing its root connections, it's like these pathways and directions have to be chosen very sort of carefully, right? Because it's like, as the seed starts to grow roots, it comes up above the ground, it needs to get the light that it needs, needs to get the nutrients and nourishment that it needs, and it knows that it wants to come out and it wants to connect with the rest of the organisms and the planet in these different ways. But it's like, what are going to be the best ways for the particular plant that you have within you to receive the nutrients that are really going to be fulfilling to you on an emotional level, on a purpose level, because we all have this very unique and specific purpose that wants to blossom or develop. But as we network into the connective collective, it's like this purpose is almost like getting a little bit confused, or maybe changing in multiple ways, right? Because it's like, so a tree that comes into the environment may have a very specific purpose within that environment, but as it comes into its very specific environment, right? Because there's oak trees all over the world. There's different species of oak trees, but there's this oak tree too that's next to me right now or behind me. And when they come up into this specific unique environment, they have to network into that environment in the way that's best for the whole environment, right? Because this oak tree isn't across the property where there's different water sources, there's different aspects of shade or different types of grass or very specific bugs of that environment. And there's a specific proximity that this oak tree has to these other oak trees that are around it. So, you know, it's networking in through the different mycelial structure that are in the ground underneath it. It's assessing what's going to be there by contacting with the different nutrients that are in the ground. The bugs are sending its signals, the earth's sending its signals. There's all these different things coming in. So this oak tree has a very unique way when it's going to come into this environment. So emotionally, right, we can look at this like we're coming into what's the water going on in these areas that we're branching into, that we're birthing and budding into right now as we enter into this collective organism structure, this hive mind that's really developing right now, that's going to receive us all in these very specific ways because there's massive shifts going on. These eclipses that we just had are in Cancer, which is about like our authentic self, but it's our authentic self that needs to be nurtured in very specific emotional ways. It needs to feel safe in this new environment that it's coming into before it really shines and we get into all of this Leo energy in August. So it's like, it's very important right now to assess where the water sources are at and where the right resources can come from, because the moon's also making aspects on the 49 today, which is all about this inner revolution that has to do with giving and receiving resources in very specific fashion, being able to actually manipulate physical structures in the way that they can be dispersed to our sensitivities, our interdependence within everything. So we're not to take this lightly, right? Because this is a very, very key time in all of our history. It's like things have to be done in a very specific way so we can have that comfort that we need, and we can also tap into that collective network in the way that we're going to best fit in. So I know this is a lot, but this is an important week because we're preparing ourselves for some very big shifts as we come into August. The Leo season is going to be massive, so make sure you take that time to sit with yourself. Don't distract yourself too much where you're not paying attention to the actual feelings that are coming in. And also, it's no coincidence that Mercury, having a little bit of Mercury retrograde issues, but Pallas Athene is squaring over to Jupiter right now on the 57. So we can feel like that, it's squaring over to Neptune on the 22. So it's like, we can feel like our intuition is really out of whack right now as to how to attain the inner balance that we need. We can feel like that there's so many masks that we have internally, psychically, that we're not actually 100% sure what our intuition is, if it's off, does it feel right, or what's going on, because the moon is moving into Pisces as well, where it's going to conjunct Neptune, may get a little bit more clarity there as the moon's going to come into these trines as we get into the next day. But we really need to assess these inner psychic, underworld, intuitional, emotional spaces right now. We really need to feel into those. And I think the solace today is that we have Juno that is trining over to Jupiter. And what this is really saying is that, Jupiter is on the 5.5 and Juno is on the 7. The 7 is all about that elected leader, that with Juno there, it's about making that internal marriage, that kind of cosmic marriage and connection with that leader that we have inside that can really consciously choose that direction, right? So it's about feeling into these spaces, but then knowing it's not that one is necessarily more correct than the other. We have the ability to co-create with all of these options and desires on the table right now. It's about consciously feeling into which one that we feel is best, and then choosing that road from an empowered, inner leader and inner child that's going to have so much fun with that direction in those ways that we're going to write this story, that from there we just open our own portal into a space that is going to be more magical than we can ever imagine. But it's about finding that space within that purity, that bliss point, that can choose that direction and knows and steps forward, not looking back, knowing that this was the correct choice because it felt that inner bliss and that inner child, and it felt comfortable emotionally with all things considered, and stepping in with our full 100% authentic being. I hope this has been helpful for you. As always, tap into your innermost authority, see if it feels right for you, and thanks for tuning in to the Astral Weather Report.